Hi, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you so much for sharing space with us virtually in such an important time. As you all know, Arizona is one of the hardest stricken by COVID right now. So I can't share how grateful we are that you all are checking up on us, that you all are staying with us in the fight and supporting our work. So thank you again so much. And just to share a little bit about myself, I came into the work because my father was undocumented. We lived in California, in Pomona, California, as a matter of fact. So I am a Californian born there. But we had our own really hard anti-immigrant era, as I think about it. And it was during Prop 187 with Governor Pete Wilson. And so my father brought us into the living room to create a family plan, I was about 10 years old, having to make a decision on whether I wanted my father to get detained and deported or to leave somewhere else to find refuge. And so we made that decision together as a family, and we came to Arizona only to find that a few years later, the same anti-immigrant sentiment would start up again with bad legislators, bad legislation that were building their political careers by attacking immigrants and impacted communities. And so that was my call into action, and where Tomas and I found each other with a clipboard in hand, registering voters, and our fists up in the other, because we were out there marching and making sure that these types of laws did not push families out of the state the way that my family was pushed out of our home in California. And so with that, we sought out to make sure that we centered the most impacted, but understanding that we're mixed status families, and mixed status families have eligible voters that had been left out of the political process. And in Arizona, it was a really harsh scene to understand that in 2004, we were about 30% of the population, but we were only about 6% of the voters that would turn out. And so we have changed the landscape. We are in a different terrain now, and we are having to respond to the political moment, but we're also having to respond to ensuring that our communities are safe, because COVID is very difficult, but also police have been killing community, Black community, Latino community, detaining here in Arizona. We're amongst the highest in the state. And so for us, it has been a very complicated terrain, but with partners like you all and so many more across the country, we feel really fortified and grateful. So with that, I'll let Tomas introduce himself.
Thank you, Alex, and hi, everybody. It's great to be with you all on a Sunday, so it's great to be here. Please forgive the no hair. My hair, I haven't been to a barber in about 6 months, so that's why you have the hat on. And yeah, I think COVID is very serious. I actually recently contracted COVID myself and have been in self-quarantine, and so my family's dealing with it, and they're getting better as we go, but obviously my parents have been hit the hardest, and so just saying prayers for them and everyone else who's been affected, whether you know somebody or whether you yourself or your family members have been infected, because it's a very real pandemic that we're a part of. I came into the work in 2010, same time that I met Alex, and the clipboard and the fist in the air was very real. We did that for 5 months, working 13 to 16 hours a day, really envisioning that the work that we were doing in that moment would lead to real impactful change here in the state. And I think in a lot of ways, LUCHA has been the catalyst to getting there. And for me, I grew up in a border town in Bisbee, Arizona, which is right by a border town named Naco, Arizona. I lived there for a few years, and in that entire time, like, our family experienced a lot of racial profiling and a lot of interactions with law enforcement, whether it be border patrol and police. And so that experience had always been at the forefront of us growing up. And SB 1070 took all those negative experiences that we had and made them legal in the eyes of the law. Like the racial profiling that we experienced, the being detained because we looked a certain way, the being targeted because we were listening to a different language and music. All those things now became the litmus for was quote unquote reasonable suspicion of being in this country undocumented. And so we came together there, and in 2014 we started taking over LUCHA and rebuilding LUCHA as it is. And as you see here, these are two pictures of us. We don't just talk the talk, we walk it. Sometimes into a patrol car and to spend the night in jail, and sometimes in the office, and other times at the ballot box. And again, thank you for being here. I'll kick it back to Alex.
If we can go to the next slide, that would be great. Go ahead, Tomas.
And so here in front of us, you see why we're speaking to you all. Arizona has incredible potential to move the state into the direction that our country can follow. Arizona saw a huge jump in turnout between the 2014 and 2018 elections. Much similar to other states, we broke records. We broke records amongst Latino voters, amongst young people of color voters, and even single women in terms of turnout for that year. And so that 17-point increase is major because in the 2020 elections, we're not only expecting to reach the 2018 marks, but we're also expecting to overtake them. Our state legislature is now within 2 seats on the state representative side. The reason why that's so phenomenal is that we haven't done that in multiple generations. And having one chamber to be able to take control of will mean so much, not just in defense of terrible bills, but we can finally be proactive in our 5-year strategy to structurally reform our state and what's happening. The New American Majority voters, as I mentioned, the Latino turnout was humongous. The NAM voters are almost 2 million in numbers. We just need to get them registered. And so a lot of our C3 work, which we'll jump on, focuses on making sure we get those people engaged, invested, registered, and participating. And finally, all this potential can only be met with early investment from people like you all who have dedicated your passions to helping us make these important changes. So that thing is huge. Can you get the next slide, please? And so what is our hypothesis? Well, our theory of change is simple, is as long as you engage people on what really matters to them and you are able to translate that passion and those energies into political energy and connect how we can affect those issues by participating in our political system, that has really empowered our members and our communities to really want to join with us. Prop 206 was a perfect example of that, where we engaged with long-term organizing. And what I mean by that is that this long-term relational organizing means that we don't just show up at neighborhoods, at doors, at schools on election season or 4 months prior to the election. This is a year-round, every single day talking to our members. And Prop 206 was when we started doing that in 2013. Building towards Prop 206 in 16, we were only able to get to 16 because of the 3 years of relational organizing. And so that theory continues to this day. We have had constant conversations with our communities. Even now in this COVID moment, we have Zoom political education events that have 70 to 90 people participating per week. We have other ways to engage folks over video that has really helped us keep our people engaged during this time especially. Here you see the NAM targeting. It was 18%. Now we're targeting more than 50% of targets. And that increase is driven by Latinx families, which is why we believe Latinx voters are the key to the state. Next slide, please. Awesome, and I'll kick it over to Alex.
Cool. So while we're trying to figure out how to win in November, we started the year having to figure out how to stop SB 1070 on steroids from returning. And so we're really proud to report that the beginning of the year was a really intense one. We actually started off with SB 1070 and this year in 2020 being the 10-year culmination of a really terrible, egregious bill that currently still stands at our legislature, and that Governor Ducey wanted to bring back and strengthen with Republican legislators. But what we did is we built a broad-based coalition of businesses, of philanthropy, community, legislators, and we were able to fight back that bill, and we were able to kill it and leave it at the legislature. We were also able to kill previous year youth employment bill. Every single legislative session, the legislature tries to repeal one portion of Prop 206 minimum wage. And every single year we find ourselves with a very heavy lift to fight back. People still being able to have access to earn sick leave, and people still being able to receive the next iteration of their minimum wage increase that they voted in. And this year was no different. We also had to continue fighting because the legislature, not only did they want to make it difficult for our youth to be able to keep their wage increase, but they wanted to continue targeting immigrants. But we rose to the occasion along with so many other coalition members, and we had that victory just before COVID hit. Okay, next slide, please. So as we were fighting the legislature, what we were also doing is ensuring that through our sister organization, Arizona Center for Empowerment, we were making sure that our families got out to vote, and that we have over 700,000 eligible Latinx voters in Arizona, and we want to make sure that we register as many as possible. So we set out to have 30,000 new voters registered this year. And alongside the One Arizona Coalition, we were shooting for 250,000 new registered voters. However, as we were doing this work, we were impacted by COVID, and we had to stop going out into the field. But because of the work that we did in 2018 of electing a Democratic Secretary of State, we're very proud to say that we worked very swiftly with our coalition partners and with the Secretary of State to be able to have our own URL sites. So now the Voteria plan is we actually have a website where you can go and register people to vote. We are able to access folks' information and follow up and organize them through our relational organizing program. So not only did we build a statewide table, but we were also working on census. We were making sure that this website was connected to a digital and communications plan that was very robust through geo-targeting, both through the radio and geo-targeting our neighborhoods, our precincts that are important to us. And hopefully for next year, we could look to a brighter future, one that no longer has Trump as part of that future. And we want to be able to purchase a campus so that we can continue the work of registering our communities and continue educating those newly registered folks as to why it's so important for Latinx communities to vote. The other piece of information that's really important as to why it is so critical, as Tomas was saying, for folks to get out and register to vote this year. There's 38% of the Latinx community that while they are not happy at all with how Trump is running this country, they are also not motivated to vote. So it's more important this year than ever to make sure that our folks get out to vote, get off the sofa, pull out their pens, sit with their families at the kitchen table. And those are the conversations that we're currently having so that folks can get out and register and can vote in November. Next slide, please. Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. So what we're hoping to really be able to bring home in 2020 is a new senator, US Senator by the name of Mark Kelly, who has been a wonderful friend to LUCHA, has reached out to our members. is in communication with Tomas and I, and most recently held a DACA webinar when the U.S. Supreme Court made the decision to stand behind our dreamers. And so we're really proud of that we were able to support in that. And the State House side, we have a small margin, 13 to 17. So we're hoping that within the next few years, we are able to flip that, but we are very confident that we are going to be able to flip the Arizona State House this year. And that gives us one chamber to be able to maneuver and contest for power so that we can move the legislation that is important to our families, especially after COVID. We don't know what our terrain is going to look like. So I'm reading I'll come back to the voter registration program. But we want to be able to ensure that our families have the resources that they need. We fought hard this year also to be able to expand unemployment. And so we were able to get that expansion through the legislature so that our families have some sort of relief. Undocumented families in Arizona do not have any type of relief, including Dreamers. Arizona voted that Dreamers included, as well as undocumented community, could not receive any type of support from the state, only the federal government for Dreamers. And so we started along through a coalition, a fund to be able to support Dreamers and undocumented workers that were being impacted by COVID. And we're really proud to say that we started off with a goal of 300,000 and are now at 1.7 million fundraised. All right, and then we'll jump over to the next slide. All right, Tomas.
Thank you, Alex. As you see here, this was a lot of our programming raised over the first couple of quarters. And the gaps that you see here for ACE, which is our 501c3 Arizona Center for Empowerment, which houses a lot of Boteria, and our gaps for LUCHA, which houses a lot of our C4 electoral program. We actually have, the gap has actually jumped. And the reason why it has jumped is because we have made a huge transition from actually being able to get out into the field to online. So because of COVID, we have been beginning to pivot away from door knocking. We don't know, we have less and less confidence that we'll be able to do door knocks this year. And so the way we've started that transition is we began utilizing a variety of apps, phone banking, text communication, and digital ads and digital engagement. And the way we've done that is we needed to increase our fundraising to be able to pay for some of these interactive tools that we have to be able to utilize them. Things like an automatic dialer, apps for organizing such as Outvote, purchasing digital ad space, digital ad times, professional logins for our Zoom calls so that we're able to do Zoom parties and other interactive tools that we're looking at purchasing, along with ensuring that our staff, who most of our staff that we hire are young people or folks that may not necessarily have what we would consider necessities. Unfortunately, it's still seen as a luxury. Things like internet connectivity, or even having a place in your home to be able to do work. And so a lot of our gap raising has gone also to ensuring that our staffers have the tools necessary to be able to raise money. So in terms of us raising 1.7 is great. On the C4 side, you see here around 800,000 in the gap for LUCHA. That gap is actually about 1.2 million. On the C3 side, the gap is still around 400,000, but the majority of this gap has grown because of COVID-19 and the fact that we have to adjust, and the adjusting has been in that. And I'll kick back to Alex to talk about the voter registration, how we've done that as well.
Our registration program right now, what we have been doing is work with and so we have been able to start funding month to month. So it's been a little bit challenging. But to answer also the question, I believe to say more about the mechanism of identifying registered voters. So we have been able to, through the coalition work, split our turf, and each organization has a turf, and the universe has been created for the coalition. So we have done everything from the digital ads that we run, being able to follow up with the folks that sign up to vote through our website. Our website captures the information. Through the radio ads, the same thing. Anyone that was targeted through radio ads, they come to our website, we're able to follow up with them as well. And then also we do cold calling. So we have also purchased lists, and started just phone banking folks when we run out of our own lists. So it's a multi-pronged strategy to make sure that we are contacting as many people as possible.
Thank you. One other question that I have is, this is Eileen again. How are you balancing your two different areas of political versus social services?
That's a really great question. Thank you, Eileen. I think we have had to incorporate the services much more deeply than in the past. So before COVID, our C3 offered a variety of services that we called empowerment services. Those were English classes, citizenship classes, immigration legal services, and some technology education. And so we pivoted from that to utilizing our C3 and our member organizers to really build out a list of resources, so that whenever we have initial conversations with any potential voter or community member, the first thing we do is we ask, how are they dealing with the COVID-19 crisis? Do you need anything? Are you missing food, or do you need help paying utilities? Have you been struggling to pay the rent? And things like that. We also ask in a very indirect way if they are from a mixed status family, so that we know how to communicate to them that we had raised money to provide our own stimulus package to our undocumented communities. We've been successful in our coalition work to raise over $3 million in C3 funds. Now we are giving away $500 to $600 to each individual who is undocumented in our communities. As we all know, COVID-19 has ravaged our entire world, most prominently in brown and Black communities, especially in the state. And unfortunately, those are the frontline workers that are being exposed first and foremost, and a lot of them may not have the tools or resources. So that we jump into services, and once we figure that out, to finish answering your question with a long-winded yes, then we move them into what did you know that the actions taken by our leadership have led us to this moment, really showcasing how Ducey is the reason, Governor Ducey is the reason why we're in this horrendous mess in the state, and also the administration on their lack of action has put us all in danger.
Thank you. Danny Altman has a question, but before that, I wanted to ask about, are you guys doing work to get your Latinx people or people of color into offices, into local offices, city councils, board of education, all those kinds of things?
Yeah, we're really happy to say that we have a really strong both endorsement program, political education program, and in 2018, we were able to elect Raquel Teran, who is a community organizer, and she organized alongside of Tomas and I. So we are starting to move our community organizers, and soon hopefully identifying the members, our LUCHA members, that want to move into anywhere from justice of the peace, which in Arizona, these roles go very under the radar, but they are so important because those are also the mechanisms that evict our communities. Eviction rates in Arizona are among the highest in the country. These are also the mechanisms and the offices that decide what types of enforcement goes into those specific areas. And so for us, it's really important that we actually pay attention to those offices. And so Corporation Commission is another that we've partnered with to support and fight back also in the past, because it previously was colluding with the utility department to fund very, very not only heinous laws, but also really terrible legislators that were both anti-immigrant, self-proclaimed Trump supporters, and also just, racists. So for us, political office and the endorsement process is a very integral and important one.
Yeah, for sure. And then I have one more question. How have you been expanding your membership and or your chapters? How many chapters do you guys have in Arizona?
We have 4 chapters. We have offices in 4 counties, Phoenix, Arizona, So we have 4 offices. We have a total of 16 chapters spread out throughout the state. We're in 4 counties. Of those counties, we have, I want to say, 10 chapters located within Maricopa County. We have a chapter in Flagstaff, 1 chapter in Casa Grande, and then we have another 4 chapters in Tucson, which is Pima County. And those chapters are spread out, made up of LUCHA members, and those are actually the members. Each of those chapters picks 1 representative or 2 representatives to then be part of a committee who does a lot of the endorsing that Alex is talking about and helps lead the direction in a lot of votes, since every LUCHA dues pay member is a voting member and can actually have a say in the direction of where we take the organization.
Nice, nice. And we have room for 1 more question, and then we're going to go to the next little section of our LUCHA presentation. It's from Marnie Fisher. How are you reaching out to other like-minded political organizations, and what are the organizations you collaborate with?
Currently, we're relying heavily on coalitions. One Arizona is a coalition that actually came out of SB 1070, and though it formed to be a hub for registering Latino community to vote, that was very underserved back in 2010, and we have continued the work of registering voters. Now, there's many forms to it. One has an immigration coalition. There's also a election protection coalition. There is another COVID safety coalition. So right now we are relying heavily on all of our community partners who are environmental organizations that focus on Latinx communities like Chispa Arizona, Mi Familia Vota, Our Voice, Our Vote, a Black-led organization, Unite Here, one of the strongest local unions here in the state. Those are some of our core partners that we really lean on. And then we have coalitions with legislators that are supporting in this UndocuFund, that the person that we ran in 2018, Raquel Teran, is actually the chair of and convener. And so we're really proud of the coming together that has happened, because more than ever, we need to be able to be working together to figure out how to best reach our communities, how to best serve our communities so that our communities have the headspace to get out and vote.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just one last thing to add is for us, all organizing or all elections are a means to the end. What matters to us is the organizing, but the organizing is always rooted upon getting people to participate in the electoral process. We don't call it electoral organizing. We call it long-term relational organizing, because for us, building relationships should be the reason why we organize. Elections are a tool to get us to what we need to get to, but organizing is the foundation of what we do.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. It's exactly, it's all tied together, but I hear you. That's where the heart comes from. Thank you so much. I'm going to, Tomas and Alejandra, it was wonderful. And we're going to go to our next little part where I'm going to bring back Renee to talk about, we already did question answer, but we're going to talk about how everyone can get involved with LUCHA by donating. And also we do have a little quick question from Danny about helping, how we can contribute to the fund for helping undocumented people. So let's try to maybe get that in there too. Go ahead, Renee.
Okay, well, thank you, Tomas and Alex, for a great overview of the work you're doing. And what you've covered is a great illustration of why Airlift is supporting you, because it's all about fighting for the issues that are going to make major changes and improvements in people's everyday life in Arizona.